Republic families and community. This is Dr. Pierce, and it's a pleasure to be before you this evening to talk a little bit about our proposed bond issue that will be up next Tuesday on the ballot for a $16 million no tax rate increase bond proposal for an early childhood building, a Schofield Gymnasium, and some land for future purchase. So we're excited to talk to you tonight in this YouTube live format. But first of all, I want to take just a moment and say thank you to our families, to our staff for the just great flexibility during this school year. We have had determination and grace and flexibility and grit, and I just would like to say thank you. It has been a very odd school year and one that we've had to endure way more than we expected, perhaps, as the year began. So just thankful for our community and for our staff. This year we have done quite a few things. We've really tried to have seated school every day possible for our kids. We've tried to have extracurricular activities and co-curricular activities, and we've done a good job at doing those things. And along the way, we've won a national award, which was great. And we've also decided to run a bond issue. So some normal type things in a very abnormal year. And again, I'm just so proud of our faculty, our staff, our community for that flexibility, grit, grace, determination, all the above. So thank you. As we get started tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the details of the bond proposal. And as you can see here on the screen in front of me, it's a $16 million no tax rate increase bond proposal that will address growth, that will address the needs of our youngest learners, and will address safety issues for our young learners too. So let's dive into what that looks like. First of all, a little bit about growth. We know that Amazon is coming. We know that Convoy of Hope is building. We know that multiple other businesses and residential growth things are happening in our community. And from that, we also know that there are currently around 1,100 single-family homes and 200 or so apartment units that are being built in our boundary. We expect that to equate to 550 or so students over the course of the next 2 to 4 years. We need to be able to handle that growth. And part of this, building a new early childhood facility, will allow us to do that so that we can take the classrooms back that preschool currently occupies, and we can use them for our elementary students when we see that growth. Second part of our proposal, the early childhood facility also meets the needs of our youngest learners. We are struggling to increase our capacity in preschool, and we would really like to serve more of our young learners at a better rate. And so this proposal allows us to do that. And then lastly, the safety piece. Both the Schofield Gymnasium and the high wind shelter associated with the EC building will be high wind shelters during inclement weather for our students and staff. So we're excited to be able to offer that to our elementary and pre-K students and staff. So looking at some COC comparison, this is our Central Ozark Conference schools that we most frequently compare ourselves to. And you can see that with our preschool, we serve about 90 students with our current preschool setup. We do not have the ability to serve more because of space. And you can see that Willard, Nixa, and Ozark and Branson serve quite a few more students than we do. So we would like to be able to serve 200 preschool students along with another 100 early childhood special education students, so that in our new EC facility, we would be looking at serving 300 or more students each and every day of the school year. We think that would be a great jump start for putting students into kindergarten who are emotionally ready, socially ready, and academically ready for starting kindergarten. We've got a few pictures here that I'd like to share, some renderings of what the new early childhood building might look like. And this is a view of the front with the rendering there. And you can see this, you may have seen this on social media, but this is just a picture of the front view. Here are some different pictures, different angles of the front. You can see with some drive-through areas, parking, and again, just the front of the building. A few more angles, and I might draw your attention to the picture on the far bottom left here. As you can see, we have a school bus on the side of the building. We will have a dedicated bus lane for our early childhood special education students who ride the bus. They will be dropped off and picked up right there at that location. And you can see there's an awning here where our staff can wait and pick them up off the bus or wait and get ready to put them on the bus in a timely manner. And this will be separate from the car line. This is a rendering of the backside of the proposed early childhood building, and we're quite excited about the opportunity to put a covered canopy, as you can see, on the backside of our new early childhood building. This covered canopy will let us allow preschool classes to go outside when it might be raining or when it might be muddy and they might not otherwise be able to go outside. And as you know, 3 and 4-year-olds need to get outside and get the wiggles out, stretch their legs, have fun, socially interact. And this allows them to get out of their room, get that fresh air, and do those things even when conditions aren't ideal weather-wise. So this is an important thing for us. We do have students who stay in preschool for whole days and some a little bit before school and after school. So this allows them to see some different areas, get those legs stretched, have fun, socialize, and not be in one classroom for the entire day. As you can see down here, we additionally have 2 playground areas. We will have 1 playground area for our early childhood special education students, including swings, and we'll have an additional playground area for our 4 and 5-year-olds that are going to be developmentally appropriate. You see here a few other pictures from the inside of the building, and probably the most frequently asked question I've had about the EC building is, will it have a secure vestibule? And the answer to that is yes, and you can see this down here on the bottom corner of the picture. We will have a window, much like we do with all of our other buildings, where parents can come up and ask questions and take care of any needed business. And if somebody has an appointment or a conference, we can certainly buzz them in and get them back to see the teacher. So it will have a secure vestibule. Over here on the bottom left, you see the all-purpose room. And this room will be able to have lunch. We'll also be able to have other events for the EC programming, a parent event or a weekend event. Those things can house larger groups of people. This drawing here clearly shows that we will be able to increase the number of students we serve in preschool. If you look down here in this part of the rendering, you see 10 classrooms. Those will be for our preschool. And we will be putting 20 students in each classroom and with a teacher and an aide. So 10 classrooms with 20 kids per room, you're looking at 200 students right there. You saw the slide a little bit earlier where I showed you that we currently serve about 90 students a day. When we fill this up, we'll be serving 200 students a day. Our early childhood special education classrooms will be right here on this side here. And you can see our therapy rooms, speech, OT, PT, those things will be here in the middle near the main entrance. So we're very much excited about serving a greater number of kiddos on a daily basis. Transitioning a little bit here to the Schofield Gymnasium. Schofield is our only elementary that does not have a gymnasium. They currently share one with McCullough. And while that's not terribly difficult, there are some challenges that come along with that. Both buildings have to pair up their schedules pretty well with one another so they can operate on a same PE type schedule, and they split the gymnasium. So while it's not ideal, while the current conditions are not ideal, if we build the new early childhood facility in Schofield Gymnasium by passing the bond, we will be able to put a gymnasium at Schofield and allow them to have PE in their building and not have to travel across the street to go to McCullough each and every day. And remember, our students are crossing the street in rain and snow and all sorts of conditions. to do that. And so we're excited about that. This will be, as I mentioned, a high wind shelter. And you can see also that it has basketball and volleyball, along with some office space and bathrooms. So we're excited about the opportunity for Schofield to have their own gymnasium and be able to have assemblies and things like that on their own time when it best meets their schedule. So probably the most frequently asked question is, what does a no tax rate increase really mean? And I'll say this, we are not raising taxes, we would be extending those taxes, but whether this passes or fails, we will pay the same amount this year as we would pay next year, right? So let's dive into that levy question just a little bit. Currently, we have an operations levy of $3.21 per $100 of assessed valuation. And that operations levy pays for our salaries, our benefits, textbooks, computers, curriculum, all types of things associated with school. Our debt service levy is 94 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, and it takes on the payments for buildings that have already been built, and it takes on payments for future things that are projects that are yet to come, like expensive roofs, expensive windows, things like that. And so remember that the 94-cent debt service levy is there to help us take care of those construction pieces. And that's important for us to be able to have that each and every day. Now, the question is, how does this happen? So the thing that we need to remember is we're not going to raise or lower taxes if this passes or fails, right? And so in the state of Missouri, you can only borrow so much money as a public school. There is a limit. We are considerably below the limit. It's kind of like having equity in a house. And so being below the limit, we can build something without increasing the tax burden to our community. So I want to remind you that whether the ballot measure passes or fails, our taxes will remain the same. Okay, what might this look like? What would be the order of progression? So the first thing that would happen is we would be able to start construction pretty quickly because we have had this on the books, so to speak, for about a year. And so this project was already planned out. We were intending to finance it a little bit different before, but that was also before COVID. And when COVID came along, we changed our decision-making and decided to put this before the voters to be able to pay this with our debt service levy. And that keeps us from taking payments out of operations. So we're ready to go. If the bond passes May 1st, you will see people here, you will see dirt moving, things happening, and we will be moving forward pretty quickly, I would suspect. Now, our estimated completion is the fall of 2022, but we've recently talked to some of our subcontractors, and there are some raw materials that could be delayed. And so we're keeping a close eye on this, but we're really trying to make sure that we are ready to go for fall of 2022. And we'll keep everybody updated if our raw materials and shipping and things like that are taking longer, and we're going to have to consider other options. So once we build the EC and the Schofield Gymnasium, we will open that area up. We will remodel, do some light renovation to the current EC. We will push central office in that direction. When central office vacates the Price Elementary area, we will go in and remodel the Price Elementary rooms where central office currently is into classrooms. And so that's what's going to give us 6 or 7 classrooms here at Price Elementary. Plus we'll recover 2 classrooms at McCullough and 2 classrooms at Sweeney for a total of around 9 to 10, maybe even 11 classrooms to accommodate for that expected growth that we believe will be happening in the next 2 to 4 years. After that all happens, we'll get CO over to the old EC, and then we'll be able to put students in the Price Elementary building and the classrooms that have been vacated for preschool at Sweeney and McCullough. So that concludes my presentation. We have had some pre-submitted questions that have come from our community. And so we're going to move into a time period where we're going to answer some questions there. And I'm going to start us off. If you want further information, you can go to republicschools.org/bond issue and find tons of details there that can answer questions and frequently asked questions as well. Okay, first question, if approved, what needs will these projects address and why are they important? So we're going to address, as I mentioned, growth, the needs of our youngest learners, and safety. And this is all associated with the expected growth that we know is coming from our community with residential and commercial construction and the students that are going to be coming to us due to that. And so we'll address growth, the needs of our youngest learners, and safety needs with this proposal. Second question, what happens if this no tax increase bond issue does not pass? So if this would not pass, we would likely squeeze out preschool as we know it, like regular preschool. Our district has a duty to educate early childhood special education students beginning at age 3, and that population is growing. So that growth combined with the growth in our elementary schools that's going to happen is going to squeeze out regular preschool. And it's highly likely that in a year or two, we would not be able to offer any what I would call traditional preschool for, say, 3- and 4-year-olds getting ready to go into kindergarten. So not a situation that we would want to have. So at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jason Perkins. We have Jason Perkins and Mr. Todd Wojciechowski here, and Mr. Perkins is going to answer a few questions. He is our Executive Director of Operations.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. So I'm going to answer a few questions about the building specifics and kind of recap some things that Dr. Pierce had talked about. So the first question that we've got is, what features would the new early childhood building have compared to our current facility? So as Dr. Pierce mentioned earlier, we currently serve 90 students over 8 classrooms in 3 different campuses. So right now, if we build the new early childhood center, we're going to have 17 classrooms, going to service 300 students, and it's all going to be under one campus. Some other key points to think about is in the new facility, we're going to have that large covered patio area. Currently, that's looking like it's going to be about 4,500 square feet of a covered area for students to get outside, even when the weather is not beneficial. We also are moving from 1 playground to 2 playgrounds. And on those playgrounds, we're going to have a setup for early childhood special education students, have that playground accessible to them, as well as playground that's developmentally appropriate for our 4- and 5-year-olds. There will also be a bicycle track around those that will be all weather that will allow them to ride bicycles and tricycles around the playground area. There's also going to be the multi-purpose room that Dr. Pierce discussed, and the current EC does not have a multi-purpose room. And so if they wanted to do any type of after-school activity where they bring families in, they'd have to schedule that with another building throughout the district to be able to do that. And with this large multi-purpose room, we'll be able to serve breakfast and lunch in there to the students. We'll be able to have after and before school care. And then we'll be able to have meetings in there as well for larger events. And there will be a kitchen in there that will allow us to serve those meals directly to our students. And then finally, the last piece that we have is that the high wind shelter, the multi-purpose room is also a high wind shelter. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to utilize it to shelter all EC students, and Price Elementary students will be able to shelter there as well, so that all of them will be under one high wind shelter should inclement weather arise. And so this facility is going to provide the ability for us to offer multiple types of programming and a continuum of services to meet the needs of all of our students. So we're very excited about the possibilities of that. The second one that I want to address is, what is the difference between a FEMA safe room and a high wind shelter? A FEMA safe room and a high wind shelter, both of them can withstand winds of up to 250 miles per hour. The major difference is that a FEMA shelter can take a missile coming at them. And when we say missile, we mean that would be like a large object flying through the air at a high rate of speed. So that's the huge difference between the two, but everything else is the same as far as having to have ICC 500 standards and storm shelter standards that must be followed. Why can't we build, say, a FEMA safe room instead? So when you look at a FEMA safe room, you have to have grants from the FEMA to be able to build that room. And we have applied for several grants over the previous years and have never been granted that money. And so there is a cost difference associated with that. We will pay more we'll pay more, a larger portion of the cost. If the grant was to be able to be awarded, that would pay for a portion of it. However, we've not been awarded one in the several times that we've tried, and we feel like the safety of our students is a huge need. And so we're going to be able to create 2 high wind shelters. The high wind shelter that's a multi-purpose room at the Early Childhood Center, and the Schofield Gym will be a high wind shelter as well, which will then allow us to be able to have every pre-K through 5th grade student and staff will be able to shelter in place in a high wind shelter should we have inclement weather during the school day. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Pierce.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Next question. Where is the location of the land that has been proposed? And so as I mentioned earlier, we are going to propose to buy some land for future building that would be like a phase 2. We do believe in the future that we're going to need some type of additional school building. Right now, we have no current land in our building inventory that is suitable to do that on. So we're going to be looking for some land that is close to town so that we can get infrastructure and communications there, but far enough away that we don't negatively impact the car pickup and dismissal and arrival at Sweeney and Lyon on Main, and then with Price, McCullough, and Schofield at the intersection of Anderson and Hampton. As you know, if you've been in those areas at dismissal or arrival, those get pretty backed up. So we want to get far enough away that we don't negatively impact those, and but close enough that we can get all of our services to that area. What type of building will be built on this land in the future? In the future, we do expect that in order to keep up with growth, we're going to have to build this building. Again, phase 2, probably 4 or 5 years down the line, but right now, I would say it's highly likely that we would build an elementary or a 5-6 building. And so that's kind of what's on the radar now, but we really need to look at our needs in, say, 3 years or so when we need to plan for this next building. So we'll see what the next 2 to 3 years, 4 years brings us, and we'll make that decision. If it's necessary to build that building, we'll have the land, we'll be ready to go and make that move to a phase 2. When would this new building be built? So we talked a little bit about that. Ideally, I would say 4 to 5 years. That's going to give our bonding capacity some time to build back up. So we'll pay down our debt and we'll be able to borrow more money, as we talked about. And so that 4 or 5 years will allow that to build back up so that we will have the funds to come back to our voters who are typically supportive of us and ask for another no tax increase so that we can continue to meet the needs of our students and our community with a new school. All right, these proposed projects are supposed to address growth in our district, but I don't see anything going on there to address middle school or high school growth. How will that be addressed? So, good question. Currently, our middle school and our high school are large. They are. We have a growing community. And the one thing that we can do, because our middle school is in our old high school building and our high school is about 10 years old, we have the space for those larger sizes. We can handle that. Another thing with our high school is that we believe that with continued opportunities to learn off campus at OTC Republic, OTC Springfield, Go Caps, that we will have students who continue to take advantage of those. And so building another large building just may not be what's the best use of taxpayer dollars at this time. If we do decide to go to a 5-6 building in that second phase, we would be able to take 6th graders and put them with 5th graders in a building, which would remove the 6th grade from the middle school, would take the middle school down to say between 800 and 900 students, which is still a large school, but would definitely give them space to maneuver at the current middle school, going from say 1,250 down to 850 or 900. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Todd Wojciechowski, our school board president.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. I am going to address a few questions related to the funding for this project. The first question being, since the tax levy won't increase or decrease based on the bond issue, where will the money come from to pay for these things? Another great question. It's a question that has been asked very frequently. And I first want to reiterate, as Dr. Pierce has mentioned previously, regardless of whether this passes or fails, this bond issue, the tax rate or the tax levy that taxpayers are being asked to pay will not increase, which again warrants the question, okay, if that tax rate's not going to increase, where does this money come from? This is essentially a $16 million loan that the district is seeking. It's in the form of a bond, but very similar to a loan. And so it's real money. It's $16 million of real money that we will be seeking. The benefit that we have in our district is that through responsible fiduciary management over the years, we have worked our debt levels down to where it again, as was mentioned previously, I think a fair comparison is very similar to a homeowner that may have created equity in their home over the years, paid their debt down, maybe adding on to the house, maybe wanting to add a swimming pool or some sort of an addition, and you have an opportunity at that point to borrow additional money, but take your term of your home loan back out to keep your payment very similar or the same as what it has been. It's very similar to what we're proposing here, which essentially creates a no tax increase and no tax levy increase. But we are taking that $16 million in real money, but stretching our debt service back out. Still a very manageable term, but a term that has been that we've created or we've been able to do due to the equity that we've created with our debt service reduction over the years. So simply stretching that term out as opposed to increasing the tax levy on that. Second question related to funding is, why do we need the bond for the EC building and Schofield gym? We were planning to build that prior to the bond. What changed? Well, a lot has changed, actually. We did have this really in a full speed mode last year, about a year ago now. And then in March, obviously COVID hit. We had originally proposed essentially this identical plan. There have been a few modifications, but virtually it was the same plan a year ago. At that time, we had proposed this as a lease purchase, which is a little bit different than the current structure of a bond proposal that's being offered. The key difference is that lease purchase, we must, as a district, we must repay that debt through the operational funds of the district, which again, as Dr. Pierce mentioned previously, gets into salaries and classrooms and daily operational type funding that we did not want to put a strain on that category of our funding. And so what we've decided to do instead is to come back now with a bond issue request. It does require the vote of the taxpayers and of our constituents. We certainly want that. I think that's a preferred method on our part so that we are fully transparent and want to make sure that we garner the support of the community on this vote. But essentially it's the same request as what we had. We took a pause because of COVID. We chose not to move forward last March. There were some pretty significant budget constraints and cutbacks that we knew were pending related to COVID, caused some concern. And I think in hindsight, that turned out to be a very wise decision. But as we move forward now with this bond issue, we think the time is right for the many reasons that have been mentioned. So essentially the same proposal, just in a little bit different format. Okay, the third question, can't the district just use the COVID-19 stimulus money, which was received or will get, to pay for the proposed project? The short answer is no, and there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, this proposed $16 million project is significantly larger than any COVID stimulus money that we either have received or will receive, and so certainly would not accommodate a construction project of this size. Secondly, we are not allowed, literally, we are not allowed to use that funding for things such as buildings. The COVID money was very specific as to what it can be used for, and the construction of new buildings is not part of that. So the answer to that question is no. We really have to go about it in a more conventional means like this bond issue that we're requesting. With that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Pierce. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. Next question. I've heard that the City of Republic is placing a tax increase issue on the ballot. Does this have anything to do with the schools? And the answer to that question is no, it does not have anything to do with the current issue that's placed before the voters on Tuesday. It is our understanding that the city has a proposal that might put an issue on the ballot for August for police and fire, but that issue is not part of the school bond for Tuesday for the $16 million no tax rate increase. If it is proposed and voted upon by City Council, it will go onto the August ballot, not the April ballot. Last question. If approved, when will these projects get started and when will they be completed? So as I mentioned, the projects were ready to go, and Mr. Wojciechowski explained that too. We're ready to go last year at this time. And we hit the pause button when all the COVID stuff hit, and that was a good decision. But these projects are shovel ready. So we believe that if it's passed, we would see by May 1st action happening in and around our campus. For the completion, we're going to have to talk to our contractor and our subcontractors and make sure that we can get all the raw materials that we need in order to finish the projects in the time and the fashion that we want. So that'll be a discussion that really picks up here in the next few weeks if the bond passes. We expect that our projects would be completed in the fall, excuse me, of 2022, but we're going to keep a close eye on those resources, including steel and masonry and brick and also the workers to get those things done and make sure we can try to hit that projected goal for having the EC and the Schofield gym ready to go in the fall of 2022. That concludes our presentation. We thank you so much for joining us, and just encourage you to get out on Tuesday and vote, excuse me, and support our school district and our students. Please let us know if you have any questions. You can certainly email and or call the district office. Thank you.